40 years. That's how long it's been since anyone outside of Celtic or Rangers have won Scotland's top flight division. 40 years of the same two clubs passing the trophy between them like a family heirloom. And right now, in March 2026, it's Hearts that are still at the top of the Scottish Premiership who are threatening to smash that cycle to pieces. Hearts, a club that finished 7th last season, a club that sacked 2 managers in a single campaign, a club that 12 months ago most Scottish football fans would have told you was heading absolutely nowhere. And yet here they are, top of the table and a couple of points clear with 8 games to go. So what's actually changed? One name, Tony Bloom. But first, let's rewind. The 2024 to 2025 season was, by Hearts' own admission, a disaster. The club's annual report described it as a year of upheaval, and that's being generous. They finished 7th with 52 points, 40 points behind champion Celtic, and outside the top 4 for the first time since getting promoted back to the Premiership. Stephen Naismith was sacked after 8 straight defeats, Neil Critchley came in, couldn't turn it around, and was gone before the end of the season. 3 managers in a single campaign. It was chaos. But here's the thing people missed at the time. Behind the scenes, Hearts weren't actually falling apart. The club posted a record turnover of £24.4 million for the year ending June 2025, up from £20.3 million the year before. They also had £10.3 million in cash in the bank and net assets of £27.6 million. The foundation of Hearts, the fan ownership group, was still pulling in almost £6 million a year in donations. The off-field foundations were solid, it was the football that was actually broken. And that's the context that matters. Hearts didn't need a saviour, they needed someone who could fix the on-pitch decision making without blowing up the off-pitch stability that fans had spent over a decade building. They needed a very specific kind of partner, and that's exactly what they got. Welcome back to Boardroom Ball, where we go into the business behind the beautiful game. If that's something that you're interested in and want to see videos weekly from us, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And also, if you do enjoy this video, don't forget to like. Now let's get into it. Firstly, who is Tony Bloom? If you follow English football at all, you know Tony Bloom as the man behind Brighton's rise, but that only scratches the surface. Bloom isn't your standard football chairman who made the money in property and fancied owning a club. He's a professional gambler and a seriously successful one who built his fortune through Star Lizard, a secretive sports betting consultancy that uses complex statistical models to analyse football matches. We're talking about an operation that, according to the High Court filings, generates hundreds of millions in annual revenue. So for him, this isn't just a hobby, this is an industry-scale analytics applied to football. What makes Bloom different from almost every other football owner is that his competitive advantage isn't just money, it's information. At Brighton, he didn't just bankroll transfers, he built a recruitment system that consistently identified undervalued players, developed them, and sold them at a massive profit. Brighton went from League One to the Premier League and then stayed there, competing in Europe, because the recruitment machine kept producing. Buy smart, develop, sell high, reinvest. That's the model. He applied the same thinking in Belgium, with Union Saint-Gilloise, a club that was languishing in the 2nd division before Bloom got involved. They've since won a Belgian title and became regular challengers at the top of the table, and with a similar playbook: smart recruitment, data-driven decisions, and patience. The football intelligence engine behind all of this is Jamestown Analytics, a recruitment and analysis company linked to Bloom's wider operation. Jamestown provides the data layer, player scouting, performance, benchmarking, opposition modelling that sits underneath everything these clubs do in the transfer market. Brighton, Union SG, and now Hearts. In November 2024, Hearts announced an exclusive partnership with Jamestown Analytics, making them the only club in Scotland with access to Bloom's data operation. That alone was significant. But the real headline came in June 2025, when Bloom invested £9.86 million for a 29% stake in the club through non-voting shares. The foundation of Hearts put it to a vote among their members. 6,208 votes were cast, 6,000 plus were in favour. That's over 98% approval. The fans didn't just accept Bloom, they practically begged for him. The structure of the deal is worth paying attention to, because it tells you everything about how this relationship works. Bloom holds non-voting shares. The foundation retains 75.5% of voting rights. Bloom gets one seat on the board, filled by his representative James Franks, a long-time strategic consultant who's worked on Bloom's investments in Union SG and Melbourne Victory. Hearts are still fan-owned. The supporters still have control. What Bloom provides is money, expertise, and access to the best analytics operations in football. The club's own annual report called the Jamestown relationship potentially the most significant in Hearts' recent history. And here's the financial nuance that matters. Bloom's £9.86 million went in as equity, not a loan. That's not an owner pumping debt into a club and expecting it back. It's permanent capital on the balance sheet. It's structurally more sustainable than how a lot of football investment actually works, especially at clubs outside the very top tier. We wanted to give a big thank you to today's video sponsor, Champions Travel. Champions Travel is an official ticketing partner of the biggest clubs in European football. Irish owned and operated, Champions Travel is an official agent to over half of the teams in the Premier League, including Manchester United, Liverpool and Arsenal, plus European giants like FC Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Juventus and more. Trusted by thousands of fans, Champions Travel sort your ticket, hospitality and hotel. Travel with trust, travel with passion, travel with Champions. So what does all this work off the pitch actually look like on the pitch? Well, Bloom's first summer at Hearts saw 16 players come in. 16. That sounds chaotic, but when you dig into the detail, it's anything but. The vast majority were free transfers or loan deals. Hearts spent roughly £3 million in total. For context, Celtic spent £38.6 million on player registrations in the same financial year. Hearts found their squad from places nobody else was looking. Take Claudio Braga, a Portuguese striker signed from a Norwegian side. He's been one of the most consistent goal scorers in the league this season. Or Alexandros Kaziridis, a Greek winger who came on a free transfer after leaving a Slovakian club most people have never heard of. He's played every league game, won the SPFL Goal of the Month and become one of the most exciting wide players in Scotland. These aren't just marquee signings, they are players that are data defined, the scouting verified and the system trusted. It's also then important to mention Derek McInnes, appointed on a 4-year deal in May 2025, and he's been the person translating all of this off-the-pitch stuff into actual results, and what results they've been. Hearts went into 2026 top of the league and haven't relinquished first place since. They beat Rangers and Celtic in their first 4 meetings against last season's top 2. They were 5 points clear before a defeat at Kilmarnock tightened things up at a 3-point gap heading into the split. Shankland and Braga's goals have been the cutting edge, with Milne and Kaziridis providing the creative output from wide areas. One detail that Opta's analysis flagged early in the season is worth mentioning. Hearts were leading the league on set-piece output. The proportion of corners turning into shots, repeated corner routines created chances, and defensive solidity from set pieces. That's not luck. That's coaching plus analysis and the kind of marginal gains football that Bloom's model is built to produce. But how can Hearts actually close the gap on the old firm in financial terms? This is where it gets properly interesting from a boardroom perspective and where the scale of what Hearts are doing becomes clear. Let's put the numbers side by side. Revenue for the year ending June 2025, Hearts posted £24.4 million, Rangers reported £94.1 million. Celtic's group's revenue was roughly £143.6 million. Hearts are operating on roughly a sixth of Celtic's income and a quarter of Rangers. In transfer spend terms, the gap is even more dramatic. Hearts paid £1.8 million on player registrations that year, and then Celtic paid £38.6 million. On transfer market, Hearts' entire squad is valued at €23.3 million. Rangers spent more than that on summer arrivals alone. And yet Hearts are on top. That's not something that just money can explain. That's something that the process and the work in the boardroom actually explains. But what would European football actually mean financially for Hearts? Now here's where the stakes get transformational. Under UEFA's current distribution model for the 2024 to 2027 cycle, the guaranteed participation fees for reaching a league phase are enormous relative to Hearts' current income. Champions League participation stands at a starting fee of €18.62 million, with €2.1 million for every win and €700,000 for a draw on top of that, plus knockout bonuses that start at €11 million for reaching the last 16. Europa League participation then starts at €4.31 million. Even Conference League entry pays at €3.17 million as a baseline. To put that in perspective, the Champions League starting fee alone is more than 10 times what Hearts spent on player registrations last year. A single Champions League campaign could represent the biggest single season revenue boost in the club's history. And that's before you count the matchday boost. Tynecastle holds just under 20,000 and has been close to sold out all season. European nights at Tynecastle would be premium priced, high demand fixtures that drive hospitality, sponsorship and broadcasting income in ways that simply don't exist in domestic Scottish football. Winning the league and getting Champions League football wouldn't just be a great story for Hearts, it would fundamentally reshape the club's economics. It's the difference between an efficient mid-tier club and becoming a genuinely sustainable challenger with a revenue base to keep competing at this level year after year. So I suppose the final question is, how far can Hearts actually go? So here's the honest assessment. Can Hearts win the league? Yes. The bigger question isn't whether Hearts win the title this season, it's whether what Bloom has built is repeatable. And that evidence says it can be. The club's annual report explicitly frames player trading as the strategic financial lever. find undervalued talents, develop it, sell it for profit, and reinvest, as we've mentioned. And as we say, that is the Union St G and Brighton model. Bloom himself said he'd be disappointed if there wasn't strong enough demand for Hearts' players over time. The whole system is designed to be self-sustaining, not dependent on one-off cash injections. Should Bloom invest more money? Maybe, but that's not necessarily the answer. The real value he brings isn't the size of the check, it's the design of the relationship. Minority equity, no control, analytics partnership, governance expertise through the board. Bloom's process into Hearts actually matters more than his money, and there are structural limits to how much further he can go anyway. UEFA's multi-club ownership rules have already forced Bloom to restructure his involvement at Union SG to ensure both clubs could compete in European competition. Hearts and Brighton appearing in the same UEFA competition would trigger similar governance scrutiny. The ceiling for Hearts isn't emotional, it's structural. Celtic and Rangers will always have bigger revenues, deeper wage capacity, and stronger historical coefficients in UEFA distributions. Hearts' margin for error is razor thin, but what Tony Bloom has now proven at Hearts is that process can narrow the gap faster than money can widen it. And if Hearts can turn this season into a repeatable engine with player trading, European revenue, analytics-driven recruitment, fan-backed financial stability, then this won't be a once-off. This is the start of something the Scottish football hasn't seen in a generation. So when we talk about Tony Bloom transforming Hearts this season, we don't want to act like it's a fairy tale. It's been a calculated gamble, powered by analytics, disciplined recruitment, and 40 years of pent-up ambition. And for the first time in a very long time, the numbers say it might actually pay off.